Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 110 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we are going to be joined by Chris Lafferty, the NASCAR driver / rock star. We'll get his thoughts on everything that's going on in the world of motorsports and catch up with him since the last time we talked. It's been a minute since he last came on as he makes his return to the show. We'll talk to Chris, and he'll join us coming up in a little while from right now. Plus, we will have our news and notes as well as our Ask David segment coming up at the end of the show where you guys can submit your questions to us. David out this week with a prior obligation with Connectus, a great partner of his, and out in Vegas this week. And before I bring in Dominc, we'll bring in the fill-in. We go to the bullpen. And welcome in the Josh Berry of Let's Go Racing. That's John Haverlin of the Circuit Journal, and he joins us right now. John, welcome. I'll be nice. Glad to have you here, my guy. Thanks for stepping in this week. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I don't know if I'm as successful and cool as Josh Berry, but, I'll give it my best shot filling in again this week. I know I've been on the show, I don't know, 1 or 2 times before at least, so... Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And you're a regular listener to this show.
Yeah, I was listening. When I was working during the week, I was listening to the episode with Lynn St. James, and she had some interesting stories. I texted you guys about some of the things she was saying a couple days ago, and yeah, I listened. I try to stay up to date with all the podcasts about racing and stuff, and that includes you guys as well.
Well, we appreciate that, John. Dominic Aragon from the RacingExperts.com is here as well with us, as always. Dom, I'm glad we invited John and he could fill in and be here with us this week. But let's get to the business of the day with Martin Truex Jr. breaking that winless streak, getting the win at Dover. Long time coming for Martin Truex. And, with his winless streak, it wasn't like he had been running bad in that stretch. He just hadn't been running at his best, and they seem to really figure something out. James Small with a great call there, going 2 tires to the end of that race on Monday.
And when you think about 54 races, Tyler, without a win, just doesn't sound right. It's Martin Truex Jr. He had been in the prime of his career over the last few years. Joe Gibbs Racing, multiple wins, and goes winless in 2022. But when they won at that Clash race in early February, he had said they were racing pissed off. They are racing with this different type of motivation. Tyler, when they missed the playoffs last year, we're talking the 6th fastest car the entire regular season, or at least the 6th best car as far as points and stage wins. A lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas. And he addressed that topic in his winner's press conference yesterday, that they've always felt like they could win. And they had a lot of good things on the table and just couldn't close out races. And gosh, a few weeks ago, it sounded like him and James Small were heading towards a dead end with what happened with the Richmond meltdown. But good to see that number 19 car back in victory lane, 32nd career win. That ties him with Dale Jarrett and Joey Logano, 27th all-time on the NASCAR wins list. Those are some great names right there, all former Gibbs Racing guys at one point or another. And Tyler, Coach Gibbs said in his press conference too, that this gives them a little bit more leverage to try and bring Martin Truex back into the fold next year, because we know Truex is good through this year. What about next year? Certainly, this has to help those talks and make it a little easier. You think winning makes things a little easier.
Yeah, it does. I would be surprised if Martin's not back next year. But I was thinking about this, John. You look at Martin get that win and ending that winless streak. It feels like that there's been a lot of pressure on James Small ever since he took over, all the way back to the days when Cole Pearn was around, and there was a drop-off of some sorts. And with him going through this winless streak and questions about Martin's future and everything, I feel like, we talk a lot about Martin here, but I think this was a breakthrough for that 19 team and for James Small in particular, for them to be a force to be reckoned with here for this championship, a breakthrough for everybody involved in that camp.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Tyler. I would also, part of that equation would be just the introduction of the next-gen car. It just kind of feels like they didn't figure it out as fast as everyone else did last year. We saw Christopher Bell win some races. We saw Denny Hamlin win some races. Kyle Busch, I mean, granted, he had one win, not his greatest year by any means last year, but Truex, just to finally break through, I think it just maybe took a little bit longer for them to figure out the next gen car. When they were racing Gen 6, and back in his Furniture Row days and even his first couple of years with JGR, it felt like he was always like right on it. But yeah, he finally broke through, and it'll be interesting to see if he does race next year. A lot of silly season debate to come for sure from that.
Yeah, definitely so. Before we bring in Chris, we got to talk about Ross Chastain here. Dominc, I'll start with you. Ross, didn't need to happen. There was no need to move Brennan Poole out of the way there. Brennan was very upset. Once or twice, things happen. But I think after a while, as many times we've seen this now, it's a true problem that Ross has on his hands here and making his competitors pissed off. What do you make of where Ross is at in this whole situation? Do you think that it gets better before it gets worse, or is there going to be more run-ins in Ross's near future here?
It seems like it's a 2022 part 2 with Ross Chastain. And Tyler, it's bad when the broadcast is talking about it and having their thanks Ross moments. And it seems like that's going to be a weekly thing, kind of like the come on, man, Monday Night Football. That's what I think. Like, really, we're running into problems every week. And especially with Brennan Poole and Rick Ware Racing, and not even racing for position, a car that was a lap down. And granted, could the 15 car give him more room? Probably not, given that situation. But too early in the race to be racing like that. But then again, it's Ross Chastain. He's one of the most aggressive guys out in the field, and he's paid to run as fast as he can and finish as high as he can. And nothing's going to stand in his way, not even Rick Ware Racing lap down cars.
Yeah. John, where do you think Ross Chastain goes from here? I imagine Karma's going to pay him back at some point.
Yeah, you would think so. Right? I don't know. I remember watching him during the Talladega race, just kind of thinking in my head, I think he was behind Chase Elliott, and Chase Elliott was on the front row. Chastain was in the second row, and I see Chastain kind of bump drafting Chase Elliott, and like I got nervous just watching that. I was like, oh boy, he could be playing with fire here. If he just taps him the wrong way, we can see a 20-car wreck or something. I feel like I get nervous watching him race because yeah, he's just been in a lot of accidents. He seems to push a little harder than what is needed. I don't know if that's like a depth perception issue with his eyes, or not to. I don't want to criticize his ability to drive a race car. He's obviously very good at it. It just feels like he's making the same mistakes, and I don't know. There's some sort of mental block with him. He's fast. Yeah. He's going to win more races. It's just he's doing things that just aren't really necessary.
And he's the point leader right now, too, among all things. Amazing how that works. Yeah. Dom, Chris, tell us about him and reintroduce him to our audience as he makes his second appearance on the show.
So Chris was on the show a little more than a year ago, and you might remember from the last show, or if this is your first time listening, Chris has done a little bit of everything, from racing in the NASCAR Truck Series to hosting a TV show with the late, great Sam Bass to going on tour with some rock bands that you're familiar with. And Tyler, I had to pull out a good rock-appropriate shirt for today's show because it's only fitting. We were thinking of who we're going to get once David told us he wouldn't be able to make it. Who would be very interesting? Who could fill in some gaps and have some great insight and good stories to tell? We couldn't think of other than Chris. And thank you so much for coming back. I can't believe it's been a year since you've been here with us.
Yeah, guys, it's been a year. I am the most interesting person that I know. I'm also the only person that I know. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with my hands. I'm just going to keep them in my lap. Man, I was sitting here listening to you guys talk about Ross Chastian, and I'm like, man, I've got an unpopular opinion about this guy. And so something to consider is this, this guy was raised on watermelons his whole life, and so he may not be right in the head, but here's what we got to consider. This guy was not, it's not like when he came into the sport everybody looked at him and went, oh, Ross Chastian, he's the next great thing. This guy has just taken every opportunity, and I think he has gone into it with the mentality of, hey, this could be my last race. And we've all seen, I mean, look, when you hear about a driver who's getting ready to lose his ride, they miraculously start running better. And so I think that's part of the mentality that Ross may have is look, every race could be his last. And now I got to be honest with you, I haven't watched him barely at all this year. I watched some of the stuff that happened in Dover, and I'll say this, the TV makes it look definitely easier than it is. I don't remember seeing that well at Dover, much less, looking at the speed that you carry. You've got split decision or split seconds to make these decisions. And I looked at that wreck that he had with Poole, and man, I'm telling you, I'm seeing a guy that is just hungry for victories.
That's a good way to put it. And Tyler, I wonder if he races like that too, because this was a guy that had a really top Xfinity ride go away overnight because the sponsor could not fulfill their obligations. So
yeah, it's a unique point that Chris brings up here of, Ross's driving style of resembling that to an extent. And he is a young guy too, I think that's part of it as well. But Chris, here's what I wonder as far as that Ross situation. When is the point when things settle down, or if he'll ever settle down? Is it does it happen over time? Is he going to have to get his ass kicked? I mean, what is it you think that has to get Ross's attention, or do you think this is just who he is?
Well, I'll say this, think about this. When Jeff Gordon was driving in the Busch Series then, he was driving for Bill Davis Racing. Jeff Gordon wrecked everything under the sun and is now regarded as one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. So, I would say, yeah, Ross might want to take some fighting lessons from the great David Starr, and he might have to utilize some of them fighting lessons. But look, kudos to the guy driving as if his job depends on it. And again, that Dover wreck, man, I have a hard time faulting him because he's just split second decisions. Maybe he knew it was a lap down car, maybe he didn't. Look, I've wrecked people when I was racing. I thought it was my fault. Later looked at the video and I'm like, man, it's hard for me to fault his decision making.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from there as far as that goes with Ross. And now I look at this, I wonder, Chris, do we see Ross with like a target on his back of some sorts of having these enemies out there, point leader and everything? I would think that these guys are going to race him. We talk about give and take all the time. There's going to be no give at some point, right? It's going to be all take with Ross, not leaving him any room, racing him harder than anybody.
That's part of the deal, you got to think about this, you were talking about Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex was absolutely, at one point in his career in Cup, was on the cusp of being out of racing altogether. When he was with Michael Waltrip, it didn't look good. And so it's one of those things where, look, I would rather have to fight every week and be the point leader than be sitting at home wondering, hey, should I have taken that risk? Should I have taken that chance? And, again, it's guys like, and I'm a huge Kyle Larson fan, for instance. I'm a huge Kyle Busch fan. But you look at how these guys got into the sport. Kyle Larson, who I think is one of the greatest drivers in the sport, has never sat in junk. Kyle Busch, one of the greatest drivers in the sport, has never sat in junk. Joey Logano, again, one of the greatest drivers in the sport, has never sat in junk. Ross Chastain came into this sport driving race cars that should not have been able to qualify for races. So this guy is kicking, screaming, and clawing for every position, and kudos to him.
Yeah, I think you're right. You make some good points there for sure. Chris, back to you, and we'll talk plenty more racing and what's going on in the Cup Series later on in our news and notes. But circling it back to you, since we last talked in the last year, what's been going on in your world, in your life? Where all of you been since our last conversation?
Well, man, I got to tell you guys this. I thank you for having me on last year. It definitely there was a spark for me in racing that I was like, man, I wish it could come back. And you guys have set that spark in motion. And so looking at different opportunities to come back racing. Nothing to announce, anything like that. You know, my focus has been on the music side of my career. We're soon to be releasing my country album, which I'm very excited about that. And I've been out touring with a bunch of different rock bands and different bands of sorts. My business with my daughter is a tour bus business, and so we've been out touring and taking care of these baby bratty rock stars.
That's awesome. Last time you were on the show too, you were on a tour bus. I think it was between a Saliva and somebody else's set list, and you took the time to come do the show with us. And you could just tell that excitement you had in the voice about the music business. You were in Nashville, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. I was actually I remember this like it was yesterday. I was out with the band The Music of Cream, which is a tribute of the Eric Clapton and Baker's a band way back in the day, and it's all their family members that have started this band. I've since been out with my good friend Saliva, which I tour with them a lot. I had the opportunity to go out with the great band Three Dog Night, which is they're rock band royalties and just such great guys. So in the midst of touring with different bands that I'm a fan of, and now can call some of these guys my friends, it's been interesting to say the least.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, and I'm curious, Chris, with as much music you're around and everything, what are you listening to? Just whether it's on a drive or in your downtime, what would be on Chris Lafferty's Spotify playlist?
It's funny you say that, because as I find myself on the tour bus late night going down the road, all the guys know that I take that's my time to sing my heart out. And my playlist is very, very wide range, everything from Travis Tritt and Chris Cornell to Nirvana and the guys that I'm on tour with. I love my Saliva songs. I love my all the classic and new country and old country. Anything that I can sing to is a song for me.
I love it. I have to ask you, just because I'm wearing the shirt, do you have any of these guys on your set list? And if you do, what songs or albums, etc.?
I don't have any currently. I don't have any cars. I've been working on I use my set list as my time to practice singing, and so I try to take artists that I like to sing to, that challenges my vocal range and takes me to places that I can't get to, and so it's like I'll take like the Shinedown's, his vocal range is out of this world, the Aerosmiths, even some of the Beatles songs. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and so it's like I'm really, if it's catchy, I'll sing it, I'll play it. I just love music, and that's circling back to you'd mentioned my connection with Sam Bass. That's what really solidified our friendship, is we could forget about racing and just sit and talk about music all day long, and that was great.
And there's some great friendships that can be forged over music. Just before we were coming on air, Tyler and I were talking about just getting the chance to jam a few times and just go out in the garage and, hey, what do you know by this band? Or what do you know by this band? And John Haverlin, the same thing, had the chance to jam out with him over Easter weekend a few weeks ago. And I know my parents are listening. Dad, you're an awesome guitarist, but John might be the best guitarist I've ever played with to this point, man. There's something about shredding on a guitar that you have. You just tell John, hey, do you know something by so-and-so? And there he is, note for note, playing the solo to all the songs and stuff.
I didn't know John was a guitarist.
Oh, he's one heck of a guitarist, Tyler. Oh man, John.
So
man,
this is a good time to have Chris on, because Chris, I didn't know this going into tonight, that we have 4 musicians among our the show tonight. So
is that why I was asked to come on, Dom? I was asked very short notice this morning at about 7 o'clock in the morning. Hey, you want to come on the podcast? And I was like, yeah, sure.
That's me taking the role of scatterbrain and not messaging you earlier in the week. David gave us a little more heads up than I gave you, so that's on me. But no, it's a strange coincidence, but it's a great one too, because again, the bond of music and just being able to talk about music or being able to play it, it's a lot of fun.
So Chris, who all have you, we mentioned just jamming and just enjoying yourselves here. Who all have you enjoyed just sitting around, playing some music or singing some songs with whatever, whether it's, someone big in the music industry, or maybe if it's a celebrity or whoever it may be, who do you enjoy just sitting back and kicking it with in that type of setting?
Well, that's actually a very intimidating question, because a lot of the guys that I'm fortunate enough to be around are just leaps and bounds out of my league of ability, and I've had the opportunity to sit and BS with Travis Tritt, who I'm a huge fan of Travis. Now, I've never toured with him, but he's also was a close friend of Sam Bass's, and so we connected over that.
Great day to be alive.
On tour. Absolutely. More recently, I've toured with the great Phil X, who's Bon Jovi's guitarist.
I'm jealous.
Extraordinaire. This guy picks up a guitar and it's just like it's wizardry. And then I'm very fortunate. I wore my Fender shirt because I get to routinely tour with the great Mozart of the guitar, Yngwie Malmsteen, who guitarist. He's the god of guitar gods, and calling this guy a perfectionist is an absolute understatement. Guys like that are just on such different levels that guys like me, I'm just like a hack compared to those guys. And so it's really neat to be, around that type of greatness and to see those guys in their craft. And then, I have to mention my really good friend who recently passed away with my Saliva guys, Wayne Sweeney, who, he was with the Saliva gang since the beginning, 20 years. I'll say this, this guy had the most soul and most stage presence of any guitarist that I've ever been around. And you talk about a guy that could command a stage like no other. And, I just look at how temporary things in life are. And, any chance that you get to be around unicorns like that, it's just such an honor,
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
Chris, I got a question for you, actually, if we got time here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Phil X. I'm just curious. I want to pick your brain a little bit here. Now, when I was in high school and I was studying guitar and all that, I would watch like his videos on YouTube. He was doing he was always playing on vintage guitars for this music museum called Fretted Americana. And I was wondering if you'd ever watched any of those videos. And I remember a couple of years ago, my mother went to see a Bon Jovi concert, but Richie Sambora wasn't with the band. And the substitute guitarist that night was actually Phil X. So I've always been a little interested in following him. And I just want to know more about your relationship or experience with him.
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to say this black case right here that says Gibson on it. Don't ask me about that. All right.
I got to ask you about it now.
Yeah. Don't ask me
I'm
about
very
that.
interested.
All right. So let's talk about Phil X for a second. So I've naturally watched some of his videos, getting close with him, seen some of his stuff. He has shared some of his own music with me, including a song that he did with the late great Chris Cornell. Now, you had mentioned Richie Sambora, and as Richie Sambora was wanting to get off the road, that's when Phil X came in and basically took Richie's spot. Now,
right.
it was what's the word? Amicable. How's that word when everybody's happy about it? Richie wanted to come off the road.
Yeah.
That word. Okay. Yeah. I'm not an English major, but Phil came into Bon Jovi, he's been with them for nearly a decade. And, I will say this for a guy that stands on stage with Bon Jovi, at these big sold out stadiums, this guy is the most down to earth, cool guy, is we're going town to town. He'll get up in the morning, come sit, drink coffee with me. We'll go get breakfast together. And he's just a regular dude who absolutely, the way, and I'll talk about Sam Bass again, the way Sam Bass loved racing, just that childlike love of the sport is what I see in Phil X, just an absolute humble guy who his roots and his stories are just of humility. I mean, he's just a normal dude who is great at his craft.
I came onto a David Starr podcast and I ended up talking about Phil X just as we go.
You never know where it's going to go. I mean, look, we don't know what to do with our hands. We don't know where this show is going.
Right? I love it. No.
Take it back, Tyler. Take it back.
Forget racing. No. We'll stay on this. Here's where I want to tie the two. I'm very curious about this, Chris. Of your time in the music industry and, in your time in the motorsports world as well, what are the similarities and differences between the two industries and how they operate?
It's funny you say that because be prepared to bleep some stuff because
we're not bleeping anything. You say whatever the hell you want.
When I went to the music industry, I was talking to a guitarist for the band Saving Abel, and great rock band. I love their music. It's like a southern rock. And I said, Scott, racing and the music business are absolutely identical, except we're not as big of pussies in racing as you guys are in the rock world, so it is so identical, the schedules, the town to town, the regiment, the planning, the support that's behind the scenes. It's like you look at the crew chiefs, the tire guy, the jack man, all these ancillary jobs that people don't think about. Music business has the same thing, from your front of house guy mixing the sound, to your monitor engineer who's taking care of what the musicians hear, to the guitar tech who's making sure every guitar is in tune. And I'll tell you this, Yngwie Malmsteen's guitar tech, bless his heart, greatest guy in the world. He's got to keep 10 guitars in tune during the course of a concert while Yngwie's throwing guitars through the air. And it's just amazing to see how these rock stars work like a NASCAR pit crew.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
so many moving parts and pieces and so many people to make the magic happen. And the most of the fans are only ever going to see that final product that's on track or that's on stage. But I think you've said it so well, Chris. There's so many people and so many things that can make it go wrong, but make it so right at the same time.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it is absolutely a team effort. Whether it's motorsports or whether it's the music industry. And I tell you, that's the appeal for me, is because for 20 years, I spent trying to make race cars faster and a better product. And now the music industry has so many similarities, except I can be more of a bum in the music industry and I got to dress nicer in the racing world. So it's like, pick your poison.
Right. Well, and one thing I was thinking about, Chris, and I'll have you elaborate on this here, is NASCAR has had such a connection with the music industry that I think totally gets forgotten about. I mean, you can't go to a NASCAR race without there being a pre-race concert of some sorts. I mean, I was just thinking about this year alone, of the races I've been to. Darius Rucker was in Austin. Cole Swindell was at Talladega. Dierks Bentley was at Daytona.
Uncle Cracker at Vegas.
Yeah. I mean, just some pretty decent names, here before the race happens. And we've seen, guys like Clint Boyer are great friends with Blake Shelton and stuff like that. I mean, people may not realize just how much the connections that run deep between the music industry and NASCAR in particular.
Yeah, I mean, that people don't take that into account. And again, I have to make reference to my late great friend Sam Bass. He was a major factor in bringing the music industry and NASCAR together with the guitars that he built for these different artists and for Nashville's trophy. And it all started with a phone call. And I can't remember if I mentioned this story last time we spoke.
No, go ahead and say it again. Yeah.
The way that it all began is one day, the country music icon Brooks and Dunn called Sam Bass because they wanted Sam to build them a guitar to give to Dale Earnhardt for Christmas. That's where it all started.
That's incredible. Yeah. And the rest is history, as they say. Now, one of the things, now we go to Nashville in the Cup Series, and I was there last year, and they did a terrific job with that race, and all the country music artists are out there. I mean, one night I was out at a birthday party for Natalie Decker at the Johnny Cash Museum, and there's all sorts of stuff like this going on, and just seeing the connections between these two and Nashville and NASCAR. I mean, it just feels right to an extent, Chris.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I can't. There's nothing that I can say to argue that, except don't ask me about that guitar.
Now you just opened the door. I want to know more about the guitar. And I was actually asking Chris before we came on air what he was going to play for us on the show tonight with that guitar, guys.
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. But I want to show you this one first. Since we've slid into the Nashville NASCAR connection, I feel like I got to pull this one out of the case so that we can talk about this guitar. Now, this is says Gibson on the side, and you're a guitar guy. I mean, you know a little bit about Gibson guitars, right?
I would say Haverlin. You're probably the Gibson.
I was going to say, who are you talking to? Because I can say
definitely Haverlin. Haverlin is a beast on that guitar. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah. So this here. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh my God! Look at that.
Okay, this is a Gibson Les Paul that you may recognize that car. That's the late great Dale Earnhardt. And so, this particular guitar
is that what we were just talking about? Is it that guitar?
This was the guitar that we were talking about. So this became when Brooks and Dunn asked Sam Bass to build a guitar to give to Dale Earnhardt. This is what became of that. Now, this particular guitar went into production out of the Gibson custom shop, and they made 333 of these guitars. And this one is the prototype that was owned by Sam Bass himself. And, I actually hunted for this guitar. After his passing, a lot of guitars were sold to satisfy estate bills and stuff like that. And this one slipped away. So now if you have a 001 to 333 serialized guitar, those are very rare and very valuable. This is the prototype guitar, the first one that ever came off of the manufacturing plant. And I have hunted for this thing and finally got my hands on it, which I'm very excited about.
So how'd you track it down?
It was pretty it was kind of out of the blue. A friend of mine he was Carrie Underwood's guitar tech. He later has moved back with Travis Tritt, and he called me because he found what he thought was one of these guitars in a Nashville boutique guitar shop. And he didn't know anything about the serial numbers or what number it was, but I knew I said, hey, those are very hard to find. I'm going to buy it no matter what. And when I called the guy, he started rattling off some names that made sense to me. A couple guys in the Gibson custom shop that I knew had their hand in making this guitar. And he also mentioned that he spoke with Denise Bass, who was Sam's wife, and everything that he said made sense. And when I laid eyes on this guitar and saw that it was the first one, the prototype, I knew that, I mean, I was going to buy it anyways, but I knew that it was coming back home to the right place. So I'm pretty excited about that. And, you know, this guitar to me is absolutely a priceless guitar. You know, having the prototype Dale Earnhardt guitar, which look, guys like Travis Tritt have a few of these, but they don't have the prototype, which is the very first one. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That is so cool, man. That guitar probably going to be in a museum someday. That is one of the coolest guitars, if not the coolest, John, that I've ever seen in my life. And just the detail on it too. Like you look on the back, and I know all of us have been to Texas Motor Speedway at one point. They have a really cool photo of Dale leaning up against his cart. They're on the grid. I'm assuming it's before qualifying or practice, probably hanging there in the middle of the media center. And that's what that photo reminds me of, just Earnhardt leaning up against his car and just the detail that went into that. Man.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's a gorgeous guitar. I'm a big Les Paul guy. I have owned a few Les Pauls over the years. I have one now. It's just a studio that I keep in my apartment. But oh my gosh, to have a Gibson custom, I wish I could afford that. That's a gorgeous piece there. Obviously we're on a podcast, and I don't know if there's any folks who listen and are also into music and guitars. That it's a Gibson custom Les Paul. It's silver, and it's got Dale Earnhardt's car on the front, and it's got the humbuckers, and like the knobs are silver, and it says the Intimidator across the fretboard. It's two things I really like a lot: Gibson Les Pauls and NASCAR lore. So
that bow tie, John, between the pickups, such a nice little touch.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to you know, this particular guitar has so much meaning, you know, because of my connection with Sam and you know, now the music connection. And this guitar gets even a little bit cooler. I know it was like you're going, all right, we're in cool overload. How does this get any cooler? The guitar strap, and you're going to love this, John. The guitar strap, you know, everybody knows that when Dale Earnhardt drove, he used Simpson seat belts. And so the guitar strap is an authentic Simpson seat belt that uses hood pins. It uses hood pins. I don't know if you can see this very well, but I'm gonna hold it up. I'm gonna hold it up to my phone so you can see it. But it's a Simpson seat belt that's held on with a hood pin. And so it's like, you know, when Sam Bass designed this, it was like a little kid designing a guitar in a room full of adults, because it's the attention to detail. Something as little as that, only a race fan would know that, you know.
The details.
Oh my gosh, I'm definitely nerding out on that guitar, man. Oh my gosh, I didn't know those things even existed.
I know. Well, yeah. I'm curious there, Chris. Do you play it, or is it just one of those things? You better not play it. You just leave it in the case. Like, how does one treat a guitar like that? What's the proper etiquette?
Well, you know, I'm sure museum people would say, "Hey, don't pull it out of the case. Keep it as mint as possible." I'm trying to figure out how to play a right-handed guitar left-handed and make it sound good, because I really don't want to restring this thing left-handed. But you know, the hot rods and the guitars that I like are stuff that are played, you know, and to me, something that's not played is useless to me, you know? So, I'm having a hard time not tuning this thing up and attempting to play it, you know?
That's incredible.
Yeah. No, I'm speechless, Tyler. What a heck of a guitar.
So, Chris, as before we kind of move on and get to some headlines, some other things, I want to know just your music career. Where where are things at, and where can people find you and hear you next? You're on the road a bit. We going to be able to see any shows anytime soon?
Well, that's a damn good question you have there, and unfortunately, I don't have all the answers yet. The music industry has kept me so busy with my client side that it forces my own project to become a little bit of a back burner. And so we're trying our damnedest to get my project finished up. I've got some of my rock songs that are currently on YouTube under 89 Reasons, which was my rock band name, but I currently don't have any of my new stuff out yet. And it's just a matter of finding a gap in the schedules to make it make sense, and that's my ultimate push, is to put myself on tour and be able to properly answer those questions. I mean, it seems wrong not to be able to answer those questions properly.
Okay. Well, hopefully we see something soon.
I think we will, Tyler. You can tell Chris
I'm hoping
is very passionate about racing, very passionate about music. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, I think so. Chris, if you want to, you're more than welcome to play anything for us too while we have you here. Whatever you got cooked up.
Well, I don't really cook much stuff up. It's a little intimidating because John's guitar guy, and I'm sure he can run circles around me, and now getting a little bit nervous. So it's like, what song?
If you can sing it all, you're already ahead of the game. Like I can't sing. I can play. Dom will tell you how great I play, and I know what I'm doing, but I can't sing. So
yeah. Well, listen, I never said I could sing. I just take a whack at it, and I don't. I typically don't care. I just enjoy it. I mean, it's just a happy part of. I'm a fun strummer, and just enjoy having fun. I've been working on. I'm gonna totally butcher this, but I've been playing with some Beatles songs, and if I can remember the lyrics, I'll give a Beatles song. There's a Beatles song called Blackbird. You familiar with that song?
Oh yeah.
It's I've been working on it because I like the vocal range, but now being a little nervous, I'm gonna butcher it. But how's them words go? It goes blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take your broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You're made for being strong, and you rise above it all. I already know that I've messed up all the words, but it's one of those things that repeats like that. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take your broken wings and learn to fly. So I just learned that song yesterday. Just so I'm trying to figure out how to play it, how to make the words all fit together, and give me another week and I'll have it all figured out.
I love it. That's awesome. Chris, we'll have you stick around. We got a couple more things we want to do. We got our news and notes coming up next, as well as our Ask David segment, where you can submit questions to us and questions you have for Chris as well. But right now, let's start with the news and notes, the latest headlines in NASCAR and the world of motorsports. Dom, where do we start this week?
We're going to start this week with the manufacturer swap coming to you at a racetrack in 2024. Legacy Motor Club announced on Tuesday, May 2nd, the team will be swapping from Chevrolet to Toyota Racing Development. So Jimmy Johnson, co-owner of Legacy Motor Club with Maury Gallagher, the team has been fielding Chevrolets for quite some time, Richard Petty and the Richard Petty Motorsports banner. But the team will be fielding Toyotas in 2024, and that announcement comes David Wilson acknowledging it as well, head of TRD, 8 full-time Toyota Cup teams in 2024. And guys, I got to say, just personally, I think for me, kind of something out of left field. I mean, we know they're not going to be the top Chevy team, and it has those reminiscent moves of when Gibbs swapped from Chevy to Toyota from 2007 to 2008, but more so the Jimmy Johnson factor, with Johnson winning all of his Cup races in a Chevrolet.
Yeah, that to me was the thing that stood out, was Jimmy Johnson not associated with Chevrolet anymore. We knew that Toyota was looking for a third team, and there was rumblings about Trackhouse being that team. I think I said a while back, Tom, watch out for Legacy Motor Club, that they could be that team to head to Toyota. I think I may have predicted that actually a couple months ago. But with that said, John, let's start out with you. What was your immediate reaction to the news of Legacy Motor Club switching to Toyota next year?
Yes, so I got a text message this afternoon from a friend who's a fan of racing, and he mentioned Legacy switching to Toyota, and my first thought was kind of what you just said, Tyler. I was thinking, wow, I definitely thought Trackhouse would be the one. We had known that Toyota was looking to take one of the Chevy teams. I thought it would have been Trackhouse just because they're a newer team. The Jimmy Johnson factor, I don't really. Yes, NASCAR-wise, he was always in a Chevrolet, but let's not forget he was racing Hondas and IndyCar for 2 years also. So there's that. It also kind of makes me think of how Kevin Harvick was in a Chevrolet for a majority of his Cup career up until I believe it was 2017. Dom, you would remember the year better than me. 2017, he switched over to Ford. So I just feel like manufacturer alliances are never permanent. But yeah, I was caught a little off guard. But I also kind of think Eric Jones and Noah Gragson, they were both former Toyota drivers. I think they would feel comfortable having Toyota would be comfortable having Eric Jones and Noah Gragson as their two full-time drivers from Legacy, obviously going forward from this year on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Chris, what's kind of your thoughts? Big deal for Toyota to have Richard Petty and Jimmy Johnson in the fold now.
Yeah, I think that's huge for Toyota. I mean, getting names like that. I mean, you got to think about Richard Petty during his racing career. Stayed pretty loyal to his manufacturer, with the exception of 1 year changing manufacturers to make a point. And we're just in a different world, and the world is you go where the opportunity is, and if that means Jimmy Johnson and Richard Petty going to Toyota, I mean, it's just business at that point. But yeah, it's a great thing for Toyota for sure.
Well, and Dom, I look at this, it's Jimmy, we know him. He had an opportunity to have an ownership share in Hendrick. Didn't go that route. Does this with Legacy, doing his own thing. This even takes that a step further, taking another step away from Hendrick, going this Toyota route, doing his own thing compared to Jeff Gordon and company. But I also look at, Toyota has been a great partner for Joe Gibbs, for 2311, for Legacy Motor Club here. I don't see Toyota being content. I think that with the money they have from Maury Gallagher and Toyota coming in, there's no reason why they shouldn't compete at a championship level, I think.
You're right. I like I was mentioning before, I think this is my personal opinion, but with the Chevrolet camps, we knew Legacy Motor Club was not going to be the top Chevy team. That's going to be Hendrick, Richard Childress Racing. And then you have Trackhouse. You have the top three Chevrolet teams already. Legacy is going to always be in the shadow of those other teams if they would have stayed Chevrolet. So you have to make a new move. And Jimmy Johnson making that ownership call to go to Toyota, I'm curious too, guys. Do we see Jimmy Johnson race a Toyota in the Cup Series next year? Because he never said he's stepping away completely, and never said one way or the other if this would be his final Daytona 500. I think there's that chance we see that number 84 in a Toyota next year, Jimmy Johnson behind the whell.
Sure.
I would take it a step further. I would be shocked if Jimmy doesn't run the 84 in a Toyota next year, John.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the number 43 Petty car having a Toyota emblem on the nose, and I'm thinking there's some diehard old school Petty fans that are probably going to lose their mind when they see that.
Yeah. Well, and one more point I'll add. I know Toyota's been in the sport a while now, but, David says this all the time, and I think we reiterate, Toyota's impact in NASCAR has been phenomenal, but not just that, but the American auto industry. They spend just as much money and do just as much for the American auto industry and the workers as the other manufacturers do. Toyota is ingrained in the American culture and deserves to be here. And I mean, Chris, I hope that they benefit from this and that they're able to sell more cars. I hope that they reach a whole new demographic being able to do this deal with Jimmy and Richard here. I wish the best for Toyota here.
I think it's as much for, a legacy move for Toyota. I mean, you think about this, and you made a great point with Toyota has taken a lot of slack from the diehard American brands. But look, they've done their part. They've pumped a lot of money, not only into NASCAR, but into the U.S. economy, building Toyotas in the United States. And now they just scooped up the 2 7-time NASCAR Cup champions, Richard Petty and Jimmy Johnson with legacy here. So I think it's a bold move and a good step for it. It's really a good step for everybody because, the other thing that you're right about is legacy is never going to be the top Chevy team. I mean, it's swallowed up by everybody. They're not going to be the top Ford team because, Roush and the others are eating that up. So it's a good move. Yeah,
I agree. It's a good fit. Dom, what else we got going on?
Well, it's been the season of penalties in the Cup Series. What penalties will get upheld, which will get overturned. We know that another penalty is actually going to be upheld. NASCAR announced on Tuesday that the upholding of the L1 penalties against Richard Childress Racing and Austin Dillon from their Martinsville car will stand. To recall that penalty had to do with improper underwing assembly on their Martinsville car, and the appeal was held on Tuesday, May 2nd, and the decision was made with Kirk Russell, Kevin Whitaker, and former NASCAR racer Lake Speed. The decision stands. 60 points between the championship and driver's owners points lost, as well as a 2-race suspension for crew chief Keith Rodden and a $75,000 fine. So, Tyler, Austin Dillon, it's like he missed a race with what happened in Martinsville.
60 points. Like, Dom, you know this off the top of your head. How many points can you earn in one race maximum?
Outside of the Coach 600, you can earn 60 points one race. You can gain up to 59 points on a competitor. So it's like he missed a full race.
Yeah, I mean, would it and really, like, I mean, let's be honest here. That's for most folks. That's the average. That's just above or right at the average of 2 races of points that you would earn. I mean, so would it have been better for Austin Dillon just to not show up at all? I mean, I think that some of these penalties are just way too harsh. And Chris, what we've seen with this next-gen car, NASCAR's been adamant. Do not mess with our car. It doesn't even seem to be about finding a competitive advantage. It seems like these teams are just trying to make these cars work. I mean, that's the frustrating part for me is that most of the time when we've seen these penalties that have been released this year, these teams aren't getting a significant advantage or difference from it. It seems like it's, by pure circumstance, these things happen. It doesn't seem to be intentional.
Yeah, I tell you, it's not like there's a huge smoking gun for what these guys are doing. Now, I will say this. I mean, if anybody should be penalized 60 points, it should be me for my singing and guitar playing. But that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I do agree. I mean, I know NASCAR is really trying to keep the teams from modifying these cars. I mean, I came from an era where the cars were so modified, and it was the highest budget, always was capable of modifying cars the most, and so it put everybody else at a disadvantage who didn't have top tier money. So I understand what NASCAR is trying to do, which is keep hands off of modifying anything. But you're right, they're not doing a whole lot.
Yeah, John, what do you think? This penalty and some of the others here, is NASCAR going too far?
No, I like seeing the stiff penalties. What I don't really know how I feel about yet is the whole appeals process. Having a rotation of people who I don't know what the selection process is like to have, person A, B, and C on the panel. I don't know who controls that or how any of that works, but it feels like we've seen inconsistency in how it's been and how things have transpired. Obviously, the big one that stands out to mind would be the Colleague versus the Hendrick Luber situation. But I'm in favor of having stiff penalties. Yeah, if NASCAR says don't mess with the cars, then don't mess with the cars. And if you're willing to risk it, then pay the price. Don't do the time if you can't do the set it backwards. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time, or in this case, the points.
Okay, so John's a cop. That's what I took away from that. Dom, what do you make of everything? Do you agree with me that NASCAR's being harsh, or are you going to side with Officer Haverlin here?
I'll be David Starr since he's not here this week. I'll side somewhere in the middle, buddy. So I think yes, there should be some more consistency across the board. And right, we really didn't get last week's insight with Lyn St. James on how that process goes. And I get they got to protect that and the integrity of the appeals process. But it would be, I think, in everybody's best interest to have a little bit more of a clear idea of how these all play out, and maybe somewhere in the middle at the points. I mean, the money really doesn't matter. We're talking multi-million-dollar teams here and billionaire owners, so the money really isn't an issue. It's more the points. There could be a happy medium somewhere where maybe you're taking just 1 point, like how you are when you're disqualified, and then on top of that, maybe some sort of penalty, depending on how bad it is. But I get why those point systems are there to deter people from trying to do anything that NASCAR doesn't want them doing those bodies of the cars.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. Also, news and notes wise, Dom, looking ahead to this weekend's action there at tell us about what's going on this week.
Kansas Speedway hosting its 35th NASCAR Cup Series race. It opened in 2001 and since 2014 has been hosting 2 races a year. I'm sorry, 2011. It's been hosting 2 races a year, and this weekend will be the first of that. The second will be in the NASCAR playoffs in September. For the 2023 Advent Health 400, some of your odds-on favorites per covers.com include Kyle Larson at 5-1, William Byron at 6-1, Tyler Reddick, and this past week's winner, Martin Truex Jr., both at 7.5-1. Denny Hamlin rounding out that top 5 of odd makers at 8-1. Last fall's winner, Bubba Wallace, coming in at 18-1. And of course, David Starr's favorite, Kevin Harvick, also 18-1 as well.
So we'll pick Kevin Harvick for David as if he was here, as he always does every week. Kansas Speedway, my home track. I love that place. Been to that track way more than any other. We've seen some great racing there over the years. Chris, what do you make of Kansas Speedway? What are you expecting this weekend?
I'm expecting that, I fell out of that race one year and, early in the race, it was a truck race and walked across the street. They got the mall there, had me some dinner and finished watching the truck race. So I suspect good eating. But, I'm a Harvick fan too. I mean, that guy's definitely a guy that can get around the 1.5 mile tracks. He's the old he's the modern Silver Fox, but I think he's still got things to prove. So that's who I would be going with.
John, what do you think of this weekend's race here at Kansas? What's your expectations?
Thinking Tyler Reddick's going to win this weekend. 23-11 won both races there last year, obviously, and I feel like Reddick has come out of the gate so strong. I think he's the guy to beat just before anything has even happened, before any of the cars have hit the track. I'm picking Reddick to pick up win number 2 on the season.
Well, and you say he starts so strong. The first couple of weeks of the year they were bad, and then they figured things out. With that from Coda on, it's been pretty remarkable how quickly they turned around from how rough things started. But yeah, I like Tyler Reddick too. You took the words right out of my mouth. 23-11 has been strong. The last few weeks they were great at Kansas last year. Kurt Busch is actually in the booth this weekend, and he obviously called the last race that Tyler Reddick won as well. So I'm with you there. Tyler's in Kansas usually go well. So I'll take Reddick too. Dom, what do you think is going to happen here at Kansas?
I think we're going to see some good racing. We'll probably see some long green flag runs. And like you, Tyler, I love going to Kansas Speedway. And I've never been to the spring race. It's always been the fall race. I will make it someday. And man, when we do these pick'ems, I've actually gotten 3 right out of the first 11 races so far. And I'm not good at picking these races. And I've gotten really good this year. And I think that momentum continues. Joey Logano gets the win done at 22-1. Will be your winner of the Advent Health 400.
Time for our Ask David segment. We ask you to submit questions to us and our guests each and every week. Facebook.com/David Starr Podcast, Twitter at Starr Podcast, and by email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. And this question is for Chris. And the question comes in from @DoorstopNation. Hey, Chris, I heard you on Joe's Variety Hour on WDXD 101.9 FM, and you said you challenged David Starr to a fist fight. Is that true?
Well, first of all, I'm going to start by I'm going to hold my guitar like this. So for all the people who are just starting to listen to this podcast, they see me holding a guitar properly, and they don't know that I hacked some stuff up earlier. To answer your question, yes, I'm the greatest there ever was. I called David Starr out to some sort of fight. I don't know if it'll be with swords, nunchucks, gloves on, gloves off, MMA style boxing. I'm coming back to racing to womp David Starr's ass.
Do you remember at all what you said when you challenged David?
Yeah, I know exactly what I said. You know, David would kick my ass. And, you know, if we're putting odds, right, we're doing odds on wins and losses, right? And so if we did like an odds on fights, you know, we're talking about should Ross Chastian get his ass whooped, okay? You know, if we're putting odds on who could whoop who, look, I'm telling you, David Starr comes out with the belt on the ass whipping department, because that dude, I believe he can throw down.
Well, and Dom, he's not here, so I can get away with saying this, but he's told me that when he gets done racing, he's got some getting even to do with some folks. I hope Chris isn't on that list.
Oh yeah, Chris, let's hope you're not on that to-do list.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I would take my guitar and I would Kyle Busch him like that's. I would have to bring a guitar to a fight against David. Not this guitar, because it's like my favorite guitar. Not that guitar, but
not
some
the
other
guitar.
Yeah, I would have to listen. The day that I honestly try to take David on, I would have to bring a weapon to that fight, a baseball bat or guitar or something to swing. And even then, my odds are probably not that good, because you know, David can stick and move. You know, he's a star in the ring.
That's good, John. Who would you rather fight, me or Dominc, if you had to choose one?
Why can't I take both of you at the same time?
Ooh, spoken like a true gentleman.
What about you, Dom? Would you rather fight me or John?
Bring both of you on, man. I did a little bit of police training a few years back. I'd love to use some of those moves on you guys.
I think you'd rather be singing songs by the police.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool, but I don't mind whipping your butt while I'm doing that too.
Oh, got another question in the inbox. This one, it comes from Matthew. Matthew wants to know, Chris, who is your favorite artist of all time?
Ooh, my favorite artist. Oh, man. Bob Ross.
Oh, that type of artist.
Were we talking about musician? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
well, Bob Ross is a good answer, but yes.
Yeah, I was trying to throw you off with that. I just watched his documentary today. You know, great story on the guy. So my favorite artist of all time, well, I have to shift to my favorite song of all time. I'm a music lover, but my all-time favorite song is Call Me Al by Paul Simon. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Paul Simon is my favorite artist. It just happens to be my favorite song. Don't ask me why.
There's an episode of The Office where there's a suggestion by Andy to have "Call Me Al" as the song to walk down the aisle. And when I heard that, I'm like, you know what? That's actually a great idea.
I think so. I mean, if you'll be my bodyguard, I can be your long lost pal. I mean, who doesn't want to walk down the aisle to that?
Nothing more romantic. John, how about you? Who's your favorite artist to listen to?
Oh gosh, I go through phases. That's tough. Yeah, I feel like it's a tough question for most people. I definitely go through phases of different types of music, different artists, whether it's bands or rappers, whoever. Lately, I don't know. I've been on like a Tool kick the last couple of months. I've been listening to a lot of Tool. They rock. They do a lot of offbeat rhythm, and they're heavy, and I've grown to like their sound a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna say Tool. I think Dom would appreciate that answer.
I sure would.
Chris, for me, I think you'll appreciate this. Like I look at it based on genre. Like if I'm listening to country music, a couple names come to mind. Dustin Lynch, Luke Combs, Garth Brooks. It would be my favorites there. Rock, I love, some AC/DC. And then I think others like, if I'm listening to rap music, NWA, I throw back to the 90s there. I don't know if I can. What?
NASCAR with attitude.
NASCAR with attitude. Yes. Like I don't. It's apples and oranges. I can't put them all on the same shelf, if that makes sense, Chris.
Yeah, look, I'm the same way. I mean, I can go from. I grew up on the West Coast, so West Coast rap is what I grew up on, and so I'm a huge fan of that. I'm also a Garth Brooks guy, a Brooks and Dunn guy, a Travis Tritt guy. I'm also a Tool, a Saliva, any of that hard rock, the Rob Zombie, the Powerman 5000 type stuff. I could go on and on and on about music all day and all night. I also have to always shift back to my sentimental favorites because they're my buddies. I mean, we spend a lot of time together. My guys with Saliva, the Click Click Boom, their song was on Talladega Nights, and who doesn't love Talladega Nights? I mean, come on.
Oh,
greatest movie ever made.
It's an all-time classic. Yes, Dom, how about you? What's your top artist you're listening to?
Man, I right now I'd probably have to say it's more on the classic rock thing, but I got to thank my brother. He's the one that really kind of opened up my musical horizon. So like you guys, I can throw some country in, some rap, mostly a rock and metal guy though. And playing in a band, we played a lot of classic rock, classic metal. And I've always said too, if I get back to playing in a band full time someday, it would be so cool to play like in a Steve Miller tribute band or a Police tribute band, or the Cars, or something to that effect. Something on that classic rock 70s, 80s spectrum. I think I'd have a lot of fun with that. But I do enjoy listening to a variety of music throughout from time to time. It's good to have a variety in that.
Some people call me a space cowboy.
or the gangster of love. How about you, John? Do they call you Maurice?
Guys, a lot of fun here on Let's Go Racing this week. David will be back next week, so don't miss out on that. John, thanks for jumping in and filling the role of David Starr this week. Where can people find you and see what you're up to? What do you got going on the next couple of days, John?
Oh man, people don't want to find me. I got nothing going on. If you really want to find me, yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's just my name at John Haverlin, JohnHaverlin. It's been quiet on me, quiet for me on the racing side of things. Just the last couple of weeks, it's been busy. I'm going to be doing a little traveling myself the next couple of weekends. I got 2 weddings to go to, which are going to be on 2 different sides of the country. So it's going to be a while till I'm at a race again, but yeah, I'm going to stay tuned to the racing stuff. I'll be at the inaugural Chicago street course race in early July. And
I'll be there too.
All right, I'll see you there then, bud.
Yeah. We'll get turned in Chicago. I like it.
Go to Wrigley Field.
I was already planning about that, trying to get to a Cubs game while I'm out there too. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Dom, what's your week look like here?
Yeah, it's going to be a nice, fun, relaxing week. Actually, shooting a wedding this weekend with Felice. We're going to be honored to do that for a distant cousin here in Grants and his bride to be. So we're really excited about that and be able to watch the race on Sunday. But spend some family time with family out in Grants. It's going to be a good time, man. It's a lot going on right now, but the next few weeks and the next few months are going to be a lot of fun. We can't wait to have you guys out here when we're back here in Grants full time.
Chris, as we're wrapping up here, kind of going around the room, what's on your docket over the next few days, and where can people keep up with all you're doing, man?
Well, the next few days, I guess I talked a little too much shit about David, so I guess I'm going to start learning how to fight. But overall, I've got some tours coming up. You know, we're prepping for. We got buses going out on tours, so I'm getting buses ready for that. Working on music and working on my hot rods. I love my hot rods. So, everybody can find me at the regular, social medias, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, Chris Lafferty Music, and LaffertyMotorsports.net.
Chris, I was thinking about this. I just got back from Talladega a couple weeks ago. Do you ever bring your tour buses or your buses out to a racetrack and use it like a motorhome or something?
Ironically, being as connected to racing as I was, I don't hardly ever take my buses to NASCAR events. It's something that we've been looking at, but somehow, some way, shape, or form, it just happened to be that we fell into the music side of the tour bus stuff, and my buses stay pretty busy on that front.
Maybe we can figure something out. We need to get like a bus going on the boulevard in Talladega or something, Chris.
Listen, I'm not mad at that. In fact, John, you're gonna love this one too. One of my latest buses I bought from the Gibson Guitar Company, and so the insides is all Gibson headstocks and guitars and stuff of that nature. And I feel like we could all hang out, pick up guitars, maybe have a few adult beverages, and have a good old time on the boulevard.
Sounds like
Chris, if you bring it to Talladega in the fall, I'll be there. I'll supply the beverages too, because I'm just that nice of a guy.
Yeah, man, that sounds like a plan to me.
All right, let's do it.
Chris, we got to go. We got to put the checkered flag out in this episode of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. David will be back next week. As always, subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit us up on social media, Twitter @Starr Podcast, Facebook.com/Starr Podcast, and by email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. For Dominc Olagun, John Haverlin, and Chris Lafferty, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.